My colleagues happy for me to chair?
Yeah.
Proposal you chair, Councillor Caswell. Thank you.
Can you second, Tony, or not?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so we're all in favour of me chairing. That's great, thank you. No apologies for absence. Good. Any declarations of interest? No.
This one.
Yeah. Do we have to go through fire exits and things like that, Debbie? Should we? Right, basically it's out there or down there, isn't it? Okay. Okay. That doesn't fill me with confidence, but still. Next, can we, minutes of the subcommittee, can we authorise the chair of the meeting to agree the accuracy and sign the minutes as a correct record following circulation to members of the subcommittee? Those in favour?
So
Aye.
good.
Thank you. Okay, we'll get into the. I'll just explain the procedure. But first, I'd like everyone just to introduce themselves so you know who you're talking to. My name is Simon Carswell. I'm Chair of Licensing and Somerset Councillor for Street.
I'm Martin Lovell, also an elected member of Somerset Council. In my case, it's here, Shepton Mallet. Thank you.
Tony Robbins, elected member of Somerset Council for Mendip Hills.
Nigel Osborne, legal advisor to the panel.
I'm Phil Wake. I'm a licensing officer for Somerset Council East.
Debbie Widows, Democratic Services Officer for Somerset, here to take minutes.
Jack Lewins, licensee of the application that we are proposing.
Thank you.
And Amy McFadden, business owner.
Thank you.
Becky Dick, Rye Bakery Operations.
Becky, what?
You might need to go. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Becky Dick, Rye Bakery Operations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Am I on? Thank you, everyone. Okay, we'll keep this as informal as we can. I don't want anybody to feel intimidated. So what will happen is we'll go through everybody. The chair, which is me, will invite the licensing officer to present the report. Then everybody may ask questions of the licensing officer. Then we'll ask the applicant yourselves to present your case, and we're all able to ask questions of you. There are no responsible authorities who've objected, so police, environmental health, so they won't be speaking. And again, other persons which might be objectors can speak, but they're not here either. So we have had a petition, and then we go through a round of summing up where we all just sum up and say. And then after that, the subcommittee will retire to make a decision. We should make a decision within a reasonably short space of time. So if you wanted to wait for the decision, you're welcome to. And then you'll receive the decision in writing within 5 working days. And you have anybody has a right to appeal within 21 working days to the Magistrates Court. Okay. Let's get started then. Okay,
May I just ask, on the result of your decision this afternoon, are we able to operate under that new licence, given that, despite the potential appeal?
Immediately, you mean?
And subject to any caveats that they may put into the decision, yes.
Okay, we'll start then with the licensing officer, if you'd like to present your report, Phil.
Great, thank you, Chair. Introduction. An application was submitted for the grant of a premises licence by Alfred's Wine Limited on the 9th of August 2024. The application can be found at Appendix 1, the plan can be found at Appendix 2, and proposed conditions from the operating schedule can be found at Appendix 3. The application is for the sale by retail of alcohol, the provision of regulated entertainment, and the provision of late night refreshment. The applicant currently operates from 2 units at the address. Both already have premises licences. The purpose of this application is to merge the 2 licences into one, whilst also extending the timings to allow for their ad hoc social evenings. The 2 existing licences are included within this report. PRL 0810 can be found at Appendix 4 and PRL 0817 can be found at Appendix 5. The applicant is a family-owned independent business who started in 2017. They operate from Unit 1 Station Approach, which is in the outskirts of Frome Town Centre. They have a bakery and a wine bar, which serves natural wines, beers and ciders. The proposed licensable activities. So under the new licence, they have proposed for the following activities and timings. So that the supply of alcohol, Sunday to Monday, 800 hours to 2300 hours, and Thursday to Saturday, 800 hours to midnight. That's on and off sales. Regulated entertainment by the way of live music and recorded music, both Thursday to Saturday, 2300 hours to midnight. That's indoors and outdoors. And then late night refreshment, Thursday to Saturday, 2300 hours to midnight. And that's indoors and outdoors again. The reason for referral to a licensing subcommittee. A total of 33 representations were received from other persons against this application. The representations were one combined letter with multiple signatures. There were a total of 41 signatures, but identifiable addresses and signatures were not provided for some, so were unable to be included. The representation letter can be found at Appendix 6, and the representations raise concerns in relation to all 4 licensing objectives. Relevant observations. No representations have been made by any responsible authority. Legal implications. The Live Music Act 2013 and Legislative Reform Entertainment Licensing Order 2014. Live and recorded music is deregulated between 0800 and 2300 hours on premises authorised to sell alcohol on the premises, subject to a maximum audience of 500 persons. The licensing authority has the power to remove the exemption, but only if and when it carries out a formal review of the premises licence. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. Does any of the committee have any questions of the licensing officer? Martin? Tony?
No.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any questions of the licensing officer?
No.
No. Thank you. Right. That was simple. Okay, so then if I can ask the applicant, one or all of you can speak. I'd rather you spoke individually rather than all at the same time, but if you'd like to.
Hello. So yeah, I think a lot of that's been covered there. Our understanding of the objections is that there may be misunderstanding around our licence application. So our application, as stated, is to merge 2 licences that we already currently have. We've been trading for a long time, had no issues. It's all been going fine, but we were advised when merging the 2 to go to a slightly later time to enable us to do ad hoc events later in the evening, but our standard closing times are slightly earlier at 11 o'clock. From what we can see from the objections, we've written them, we've got kind of responses to the objections if you wanted to go through them, but essentially a lot of them are referring to a late night event that took place in the building, but in another area of the building that doesn't relate to our application and is not in our licensed area. So yeah, don't know if there's anything else you want me to go through, but do you want to go through those, Becky?
I was just going to add as well, I think the plan is really important as well to this application, because obviously the notice stated Unit 1, which is the front of the building and not the back of the building. So a lot of the specific objections relate to parts that are not in our lease and not in our application.
I was just going to say that I don't know if the licensing officer had referenced that, but the environmental health were called out the day before the application was complete for a late night event that happened, as Amy and Becky were saying, at the back of the building. So there's another licensed property at the back of the building who applied for a TENS, and while they didn't technically breach their temporary event notice, the noise escape from the back of the building was loud enough for neighbours to come physically in and say, this is too late, we didn't get a notice, blah, blah, blah. So it's quite clear what they're saying in the actual objection, that it is referring to noise escape from the back. That's not something that we suffer from at the front.
Okay, can you just clarify to me the structure of the business? Because we've got application from Alfred's Wine Limited, and yet we also mentioned Y Bakery. And
Yes, of course. So I am co-owner of Rye Bakery, Alfred's Bread, and Alfred's Wine Limited. So we have Rye Bakery Limited, and then the bakery is Alfred's Bread Limited, trading as Rye Bakery. The wine bar is the newest of the three, and this business is trading as Alfred's Wine Limited. So when I say Rye Bakery, that's just the kind of the mothership of the three.
okay, thank you. Not sure if I get that, but yeah, I think.
I mean, there's two. Essentially, there's a shared. There's a building kind of like this, for example, and we own 2 units, both of which are separate limited companies with the same ownership structure. And so for example, if you think about a food hall where you've got one place that sells booze and like all these other people peddling food, that's kind of the structure. We own a couple of businesses within that space.
Thank you for that clarification. I'll move on to the other members, and I might come back. Martin?
Yeah, it was a bit of clarification for me about the sound of the factor of the application and what sort of regulation that you're putting on it yourselves. We've obviously got the hours. What decides whether things are too loud and where neighbours may complain and so on, all that sort of factor, because I'm not completely clear on that.
Sure. So we've put in place a noise management plan. We are a kind of significant distance from houses, but our music is earlier. So at the moment, the live music that we're doing finishes by 10 p.m. It's music to accompany food. We intend to make sure that there is no impact or limited impact on those neighbours, and don't intend for it to be a late night or nightclub, as has been mentioned in the objections. Anything else you want to mention about that?
Well, obviously, the clarification then, to what extent is what happens outside? I mean, I can understand inside, you can probably get away with a certain amount, but obviously you're trading outside, so what will be the impact there?
So we have a seating area outside of the premises. In winter, that is enclosed with a plastic wall, so there is a kind of barrier between the outside area and the houses. In the summer, that's taken down and there is outdoor seating. But again, we're thinking about ways in which we can monitor the sound levels to ensure that that has very little impact on the local residents.
Yeah, and just to sort of further that a little bit, I mean, the place has been operating since lockdown with this outside space essentially in a car park. It's called the Station Approach. It's right next to the train station in an industrial estate with a car park, and we occupied within our licensed area already that exists for either the Rye Bakery or the pre-existing tenants to the unit that we've now occupied as the wine bar. If that makes sense. Outside is basically part of the whole spirit of the place, and that's it's different to, for example, a beer garden in a pub. It's like you actually walk through the car park into this shared seated area. There are 3 other people selling food in shipping containers and trailers selling cheese or Indian food. So it is this kind of community hub that has existed, that's pre-existing for the last 4 or 5 years. And we, over that course of that period, we've intermittently had, DJs playing from 6 till 10 or 6 till 11 or whatever, sometimes in the daytime, a little bit of live music occasionally. While we're not applying for a nightclub license or a live music venue per se, we want the point of the application on advice from the local police and the councillors. The licensing officer is that you know, introducing a provision that allows you to continue that activity is kind of the goal.
Again, Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I only have one question. You've obviously been trading in that area for quite some time and you're very experienced at it. During that period, have you had serious complaint about noise? Not directly from neighbours, but from the licensing people?
We've had no objections. We've had no issues under our license. I think the license, the property that we've occupied now, in the past, under different licensees, under different trading companies, there has been an issue. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, one breach of license.
But that wasn't to do with noise.
That wasn't to do with noise.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tony. I've got a couple of other questions. The actual original application didn't deal with noise at all. You have provided subsequently a noise management plan, but though you put quite a lot in there, you're not obliged to actually comply with that plan. Is that correct, Nigel? And also, what else was I going to say? Oh yes, in the actual application, you've just going to the right page. You've put in things like CCTV. You shall install pub watch. You will be dispersal policy will be created, and SIA you will or shall draw up a risk assessment, and drugs policy as well. Shall develop an anti-drugs policy. So I suppose my question is, haven't you already got these in place to a degree? And again, how do we evidence that you've actually done this or will be doing this?
Yes, as we already have the 2 licenses, all of those things are already in place. And if you need any of that information providing, we can provide that for you. Potentially, we don't have the paperwork on us now, but we could definitely provide that. And yeah, things like CCTV, obviously, we've had to have that in place for the business anyway. So having had the license at the bakery for 5 years or so, all of those are in place. And then we've done them again for Alfred's Wine Limited. So we have them twice for both businesses.
Thank you. I think after the meeting, it might be helpful if we had that paperwork. Nigel, Phil, yeah. Thank you.
Just to sort of consolidate that point, we had a visit from the local licensing police officer who manages the license, and she helped us put together our provisional pack, including Challenge 25, etc. In order for us to start trading. So that happened before we started trading under the new company in April, May, earlier this year.
Just so I've got some sort of idea of numbers, I don't suppose you specifically have covers in the establishment, but how many people would there be inside and outside if you were very busy?
We, in the region of 150 people is the maximum. More often we're talking about between sort of 50 and 70, and sometimes a bit fewer.
I suppose it's a bit vague, but what sort of music, or what are you talking live entertainment? Are you talking not piped music, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so the live music nights that we've been putting on are to support local artists, but also to create background music and a kind of, an ambiance for our customers who are buying food from our other premises. So originally the wine bar was open to kind of accompany the food business that is already there. So it's very much a kind of, it's food, it's music you want to listen to while you're eating. So it's not kind of, there's no heavy metal.
So we both thought heavy metal at the same time there. Tony Martin, do you have any other questions?
No, Chair, I don't. I think it's been well covered.
Thank you. Phil, did you have any questions?
No, what I was going to suggest is that they provide an overview, the applicant provides an overview of the ad hoc evenings, but I think that's all been covered over the various questions that have been asked. So yeah, no questions from me. Thank you.
Nigel, did you have anything, points you want to make?
I've got a plan of the site here. Do you think you could show me on here where the outside area is?
Highlighted, which might be better. Do you want to take that over?
Whichever, you know, but
It's just that Becky's got one that's got the licensed area in it, so that might be helpful.
That licensed area,
He's now walking around the table.
that licensed area that we've highlighted there was a provision that was proposed to us in cahoots with the local police officer to say, what is your delimited area? What are you trying to achieve here in terms of licensable activity, whether it's a servery or a place for customers to be? Becky, would you, Becky,
She can see it.
you've got two different maps, but would you just also highlight, for the purposes of the councillors there, maybe circle the back area, which is a separate licence?
Just a quick question about the objections that were sent. Obviously, some of them feel like they're not relevant to our application. I wonder whether is it at all helpful to go through the 15 objections and say, this one is not relevant, this one's not relevant, this one might be relevant, and or are you happy that we've covered what we need to cover in this?
I don't think we need to really. I think we know that areas that relate to planning are not relevant. I think they mentioned house values, it's not relevant. So there are a number of items that weren't relevant. There's some that were, but we're aware of what were and weren't. So I don't think we need to cover that. Okay, if we finished with questions of the applicant, there are no response. Yep, sorry, Nigel.
just one more, just as a point of clarification. We've been handed this piece of paper for a reason. It's got Rye Wine Bar noise management plan on the top. That you were submitting that as part of your application now, because it obviously is now saying that you will now do live amplified music will be played until 2300. So you're in effect offering to change your application for outside music to 2300 from midnight. Is that correct?
I think the point is that we want to be able to trade until midnight. For example, the motive of the application came from the idea that we were, around bank holiday weekends, we might just want to extend the hours a bit. Now, we don't have to have the music on outside, for example, in that period. So while we still want to have an alcohol license till midnight, that might be some, for example, recorded music but inside rather than outside.
Do you want to say that? So we should not include it if we can.
Yeah, so I think we, following the event on the 30th in Owen Sausages and Hands at the Back, I had a conversation with Rick Keith Hill, and we've drafted the noise management plan. So it's not a submission as part of the application, it was a draft document that we're working on, that we created to have in place in response to acknowledging feedback that happened.
I don't think we had requested for it to be passed around at this. I don't know if it needs to be. It might be something that we can work on, and it's not included in this. But yeah.
So, are you preparing a noise management plan, something above and beyond what we have been provided with here?
Yeah, I think that is the answer.
With the advice of the environmental health officer, he suggested we put together a noise management plan that is then maybe not part of our license. I don't know what the legal ramifications are, but something that we can adhere to so that we've got a measuring post for our own activity.
I suppose once you have drawn up that noise management plan, it would be good to have a copy of that.
Mhm.
Thank you. Okay, there's no responsible authorities who've objected or made comments. There are no other persons here to ask questions or talk on the subject. So we'll go straight to the applicant. Do you want to just do a brief summing up? You don't have to, but you can.
If I just sum up what we're trying to do. So we currently have 2 licenses, and we're just trying to unify our 2 licenses. We are a family-friendly bakery and pizzeria with a wine bar where we're selling natural wines. We are not intending to apply for a nightclub application for a nightclub. We want to do daytime retail of wine, and the evening element is to enable us to thrive as a local business and to cover us on occasions where we may want to stay open later, but our standard opening times may well be less. Yeah. Anyone else would like to add?
Yeah, I mean, that's the nub.
Yeah, you don't have to speak just for the sake of speaking, that's fine. Licensing officer, do you want to sum up?
Thank you, Chair. The decision-making process. The subcommittee must consider this application on its own merits and the information contained within the application and this report. Members are reminded that the duty of the licensing authority is to take steps necessary to promote the licensing objectives in the interest of the wider community. The licensing objectives are as follows: the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and protection of children from harm. In its decision-making process, the licensing subcommittee must have regard to the Licensing Act 2003 and subsequent amendments, the statutory guidance issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003, and Somerset Council's Statement of Licensing Policy. The options available to the committee are as follows: grant the application with no modifications and only attach conditions as required by the 2003 Act. These shall include mandatory conditions and conditions consistent with the operating schedule. Grant the application modified to such an extent as the licensing authority considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives, or refuse the application, giving reasons for its decision. Should the committee be mindful to attach conditions to the licence, they must only do so if they are appropriate, necessary and proportionate, precise, clear and unambiguous, practical, realistic and enforceable, non-duplicative of existing statutory requirements or offences, modern and fit for purpose, and consideration must also be given to the number of conditions being attached. The licensing authority recognises that most licence holders seek to follow the law, and any enforcement action will normally follow a graduated approach, and in the first instance will include education and support. Where licence holders continue to flout the law or act irresponsibly, firm action will be taken. Right of appeal. All relevant parties to the decision of the licensing authority have the right of appeal to Magistrates' Court in connection with this matter. This must be done within 21 days of being notified in writing of the relevant decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, so now what happens is we ask everyone to leave the room apart from the subcommittee and the legal officer. If you want to wait downstairs, you're welcome to, and we'll call you back in once we've made a decision. But if you have to dash off, then you will get the response within 5 working days.
We won't dash off, we'll wait downstairs.
Okay.
Councillor Robbins, if you want to log on to the pre-meet link for the deliberations, I'm going to leave this meeting now.
Will do.